The gleaming skyscraper of Horizon Enterprises stood tall against the Manhattan skyline, a monument to ambition and power. At its helm was Daniel Hargrove, a man who had clawed his way to the top through sheer determination, a razor-sharp mind, and a reputation for ruthlessness. At 42, he was the youngest CEO in the company's history, and he wore that badge with pride. His office on the 75th floor was a shrine to his success, walls lined with awards, a desk of polished mahogany, and a panoramic view that reminded him daily of how far he'd come from the cramped apartment in Queens where he'd grown up. On this particular Tuesday morning, Daniel leaned back in his leather chair, sipping a black coffee as he reviewed the quarterly reports. The numbers were good, better than good, in fact. Profits were up 18%, and the new AI division was exceeding expectations. But there was one thorn in his side, one small irritation that had been gnawing at him for weeks: Emily Carter. Emily was a junior analyst in the finance department, a recent hire who'd come with glowing references but, in Daniel's opinion, had failed to live up to the hype. She was quiet, unassuming, and, worst of all, slow. Her reports were meticulous, yes, but they arrived later than he liked, and she had a habit of questioning his decisions in meetings. Not outright, of course, she was too clever for that, but with subtle comments that made his blood boil. "Are we sure this aligns with long-term growth?" she'd asked once, her soft voice cutting through the room like a knife. The nerve of her. Daniel didn't tolerate dissent, especially not from someone so low on the totem pole. He'd built Horizon Enterprises into a powerhouse by trusting his instincts, not by listening to every timid voice in the room. And so, that morning, he made up his mind. Emily Carter had to go. He buzzed his assistant, Claire, through the intercom. "Get me HR on the line. And tell Emily Carter to come to my office at 11 a.m. sharp." Claire hesitated. "Are you sure, Mr. Hargrove?" "She's been working on the investor presentation for next week." "I don't care," he snapped. "She's done here." By 11 a.m. Emily stood in front of his desk, her hands clasped in front of her. She was a slight woman, mid-20s, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun and a pair of glasses that made her look more like a librarian than a corporate analyst. Her gray blazer was slightly wrinkled, which only irritated Daniel more. "She didn't belong here." "Emily," he began, not bothering to look up from the papers he was signing, "I'm letting you go." She blinked, her expression unreadable. "May I ask why?" He set his pen down and leaned forward, fixing her with a cold stare. "You're not a good fit. Your work is slow, your attitude is questionable, and frankly, I don't see you adding value to this company. HR will handle the paperwork. You're done as of today." For a moment, she said nothing. Then, quietly, she nodded. "I understand. I'll clear out my desk." "Good," he said, already turning his attention back to his work. "Close the door on your way out." She left without another word, and Daniel felt a flicker of satisfaction. One less problem to deal with. He had a lunch meeting with a potential client at noon, and after that, a call with the board. Emily Carter was already a footnote in his mind. What Daniel didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Emily Carter wasn't just any junior analyst. Her full name was Emily Victoria Carter, and her father was none other than Victor Grayson, a billionaire investor whose fortune dwarfed Horizon Enterprises' entire market cap. Victor was a reclusive man, a titan of industry who preferred to operate in the shadows. He owned stakes in dozens of companies, from tech startups to oil conglomerates, and Horizon was one of his quieter investments, a 15% stake that he'd acquired years ago through a shell company. Few people knew he was involved, and Daniel certainly didn't. Emily had joined Horizon not because she needed the job, but because she wanted to prove herself. Growing up in the lap of luxury, she'd been sheltered from the world her father dominated. Private tutors, sprawling estates, chauffeurs, she'd had it all, but she'd hated the way people treated her like a porcelain doll. At 24, she'd begged her father to let her strike out on her own, to work somewhere where no one knew her name or her lineage. Victor had reluctantly agreed, on one condition: she wouldn't use his influence to get ahead. So Emily had applied to Horizon Enterprises under her mother's maiden name, Carter, with a resume scrubbed of any hint of privilege. She'd earned her spot through hard work, or so she thought. What she hadn't anticipated was a boss like Daniel Hargrove, arrogant, dismissive, and blind to the potential she carried in her quiet demeanor. As she packed her belongings into a small cardboard box that afternoon, Emily felt a mix of anger and relief. She'd tried to fit in, to play by the rules, but it hadn't mattered. Daniel had judged her without even bothering to see what she could do. She thought about calling her father, telling him everything, but she stopped herself. No. She'd handle this her own way. The next few days passed uneventfully for Daniel. He closed the deal with the new client, the board call went smoothly, and the investor presentation was shaping up nicely, even without Emily's input. By Friday, he was feeling invincible. That evening, he attended a gala at the Met, rubbing shoulders with New York's elite. He wore a tailored tuxedo, his dark hair slicked back, and a glass of champagne in hand as he worked the room. It was there that he first saw Victor Grayson. The older man stood near the edge of the crowd, a towering figure with silver hair and a face carved from stone. He wore a simple black suit, no tie, and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Daniel had heard of Grayson, of course, everyone in business had. The man was a legend, a kingmaker who could turn a failing company into a goldmine with a single phone call. Daniel had never met him, but he'd always dreamed of catching his eye. Seizing the opportunity, Daniel made his way over. "Mr. Grayson," he said, extending a hand. "Daniel Hargrove, CEO of Horizon Enterprises. It's an honor to meet you." Victor's handshake was firm, his gray eyes assessing. "Hargrove," he repeated, as if testing the name. "Horizon. I've heard of it." Daniel grinned. "We're doing some exciting things, AI, renewable energy. I'd love to tell you more sometime. Maybe over lunch." Victor's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Maybe. I'll have my people reach out." It was a small victory, but Daniel felt a rush of adrenaline. If he could get Victor Grayson on board, Horizon stock would soar. He spent the rest of the night riding that high, oblivious to the storm brewing just out of sight. The following Monday, Daniel arrived at the office to find an email waiting in his inbox. It was from Victor Grayson's assistant, confirming a meeting that afternoon at Grayson's private office downtown. Daniel could hardly believe his luck. He spent the morning preparing, gathering data on Horizon's latest projects, rehearsing his pitch. This was his chance to secure the kind of investment that could cement his legacy. At 2 p.m. he stepped into Grayson's office, a sleek, minimalist space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. Victor sat behind a steel desk, his hands folded in front of him. To Daniel's surprise, there was someone else in the room, a young woman standing by the window, her back to him. She turned as he entered, and his stomach dropped. It was Emily Carter. She looked different now, her hair loose, her glasses gone, her posture radiating a quiet authority he hadn't seen before. She wore a tailored suit, deep blue, and her eyes met his with a cool, unflinching gaze. "Mr. Hargrove," Victor said, his voice low and deliberate. "Take a seat." Daniel obeyed, his mind racing. What was she doing here? Had she run to Grayson after he fired her, spinning some sob story? He forced a smile. Mr. Grayson, I didn't expect. Quiet, Victor interrupted, his tone cutting through the air like a blade. I'm not here to listen to you yet. I'm here to ask you something. Daniel swallowed. Of course. Victor leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Why did you fire my daughter? The words hit Daniel like a freight train. Daughter? He glanced at Emily, then back at Victor, his mouth dry. I didn't know. You didn't know, Victor echoed, his voice dripping with disdain. That's the problem, isn't it? You didn't bother to know anything about her. You saw a junior analyst, someone beneath you, and you threw her out without a second thought. Daniel's mind scrambled for a response. Sir, I assure you, it wasn't personal. She wasn't performing at the level we needed. Wasn't performing. Victor cut in. Her reports were the most thorough in your department. She caught a $2 million error in your last budget projection, something your senior team missed. And you call that underperforming? Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. He vaguely remembered Emily flagging something in a meeting, but he dismissed it as nitpicking. I made a judgment call. A bad one, Victor said flatly. He stood, towering over the desk. Do you know why I invested in Horizon, Hargrove? It wasn't your charm or your vision. It was because I saw potential in the people you had, the ones you're too arrogant to notice. Emily stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. I didn't tell him who I was, Dad. I wanted to earn my place. But Mr. Hargrove didn't give me a chance to prove anything. He decided I was disposable. Daniel felt the room closing in. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Apologies won't fix this, Victor said. He pulled a folder from his desk and slid it across to Daniel. This is a notice of intent. I'm pulling my investment from Horizon Enterprises, effective immediately. 15% of your stock, gone. I'll let the market sort out the rest. Daniel stared at the folder, his heart pounding. You can't do that. The board answers to money, Victor said. And I have more of it than you can dream of. You'll feel this by tomorrow morning. Panic surged through Daniel. A 15% drop would tank the stock price, trigger a sell-off, maybe even cost him his job. Please, he said, his voice cracking. Let's talk about this. I'll reinstate her, give her a promotion. It's too late for that, Emily said, her tone icy. I don't want your job anymore. I wanted to build something, but you made it clear I don't belong in your world. Victor nodded. She's starting her own firm. I'm backing her. And I'll make sure every investor I know hears about how you run your company. Daniel's world crumbled around him. He'd underestimated her, dismissed her, and now it was costing him everything. I'll fix this, he pleaded. Give me a chance. Victor's eyes were unforgiving. You had your chance. You fired it. The next morning, the news hit Wall Street like a tsunami. Grayson's withdrawal sent Horizon stock into freefall, wiping out billions in market value within hours. By noon, the board called an emergency meeting, and by evening, Daniel was out. No severance, no golden parachute, just a box of his belongings and a security escort to the elevator. Meanwhile, across town, Emily sat in a modest office she'd rented with her father's seed money. It was small, bare bones, nothing like Horizon's glittering tower. But it was hers. She opened her laptop and began drafting a business plan, a faint smile on her lips. Daniel Hargrove had thought he could bury her. Instead, he'd lit the spark that would build an empire.